During what will be remembered as the summer of COVID, with travel restrictions, shutdowns, and peak fear, my friends and I wanted to have a big adventure, but we wanted to do it safely. We started asking ourselves, what could we do that minimized travel and mitigated all the mingling with the outside world? What were our backyard options that wouldn't burn a ton of fossil fuel or increase our chances of making the pandemic worse? The solution was a self-supported ski and bike trip. We devised a plan to climb and ski every Cascade volcano above 9,000 feet across Northern California and Oregon with just human power. This would mean carrying all of our food and gear in bike trailers, filtering all of our water, and camping along the way. We would be a 3-person pod, moving slowly and forgoing restaurants, quick gas station stops, and hotels. The question was, would we be able to do it all in less than 3 weeks? Would our legs hold up, or our minds not break from the stress? And would June serve up nice weather to make it even possible? We mapped out the prominent peaks and noticed an odd pattern. Between each volcano was roughly 100 miles of road. So we gave ourselves 1 day to climb each peak and 1 day to bike to the next, with a few contingency days for bad weather, mishaps, reroutes, and fatigue. In total, we would ride over 650 miles with 100,000 feet total vert between biking and skiing. Before we started, I remember thinking, how bad could it be?
This is like a lot harder than just a 60-mile ride.
We had to keep my dick for 32 years and now it's gone.
This is my best friend Wyatt. Crazy athlete, kind soul, all around amazing human. He's just dumb enough to say yes to my routinely bad ideas. And this is Charlie, uber smart engineer, amateur bike racer, son of a 3-time Olympian, and one of the most loyal people I've ever met. And that's me, Andy, writer, dirtbag, and as I'm about to find out, lesson learner.
I'm gonna weigh it. I think 85, all in.
306. 306 or 307.
Oh no. 140? 140? Cool. Not including the bike and all the gear on the bike.
Despite our bikes and trailers weighing a combined 180 pounds, the trip started on high. Naivete has a way of pulling you into things. Mount Lassen was our easiest peak, a quick 2,000-foot climb. Besides a little wind, we had great conditions and raced up the mountain. From the summit, we got a look at the next and tallest objective, Mount Shasta. The corn loosened up to give us great turns all the way down. Stoke was pretty high at that point.
So Andy, you're looking at mountain forecast?
Yeah.
What does that look like for Shasta tomorrow?
It looks like there's a system coming in, and not just on Shasta, but it was like all over, down here in Lassen and north. Like snow in June.
How much?
I think it was like 4 or 5 inches. I think the goal would be like try to get there today. We got 10 or 11 hours of sunlight.
Yep.
We barely had to pedal for the first hour of the ride, dropping thousands of feet to the valley floor, and the idea of making it 110 miles to Shasta by sundown seemed totally plausible. That is, until we reached the first hill, which would teach us lesson number 1. Slow and steady wins the race. The bike and trailer combo was fast on the descent and manageable on the flats, but as soon as you hit the smallest hill, it drags like a ball and chain. Our hopes of riding more than a century to Shasta soon vanished as one hill rolled into the next and the hours ticked away.
God,
Charlie doesn't know this about me yet. He's just starting to realize.
What's that?
I'm a pretty big morning person.
What?
Yeah. Have been since I was a kid. I never went through like a high school sleep-in phase. Just like up at 6:30.
That's why he has no compassion for human life.
Yeah, that's a component.
Point proven.
Back on the bikes and a quick 20 miles later, we were rolling through the town of Mount Shasta. As we started the long climb up the mountain, the plan went off the rails. A big January storm rolled in, quickly showing us that our biggest peak was a no-go, at least for the day, possibly 2. We were only 2 days into the epic, and already 2 days behind schedule. We had to do our best to stay patient.
Yeah. Well, Crocs with socks. Gray out. My mom used to wear sandals, like thong sandals, with socks as the librarian to my school. Holy shit, that was embarrassing.
You didn't have many friends, did you?
No.
Yeah. Up at 2. Quick breakfast, just granola and coffee. We're moving by 3 period.
I get my 3.
That works for me.
I like that.
All right, let's go this one.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Like most bad things, storms eventually pass. After waiting a day, we were greeted with a beautiful morning and great climbing conditions. Including a mythical June powder day.
You all right?
Yeah. Oh, fuck.
What hurts?
Shoulder came out.
Out?
Let me back in.
Take a minute. Where is it?
Take your time. It's back in.
It's back in.
Oh.
Wyatt has dislocated his shoulder twice in the past and popped it out on this fall. Fortunately, he was able to get it back in with his own strength and carry on, with only minor pain for a few days afterwards. Which brings me to lesson number 2. Adventure is a ride. It's not steady, predictable, or controllable, and that's probably the best part.
Chill in the pack.
After a 10-hour bike-to-bike lap of Shasta, we were back in the saddle, getting a head start on our ride to the next objective, Mount McLaughlin. We made it off the mountain and began to wrap around to the east side of the Cascades, only to learn lesson number 3. There is no water in a desert. While the west side of the Cascades is green and lush, the east side is barren and extremely dry. Exhausted and thirsty, we camped at the first place we could find with any semblance of water, a dried up creek on the side of a busy highway, with just a few puddles we could filter from. With good weather and rural roads for most of the next day, we started thinking this wild idea might be possible. If we played our cards right and got a little lucky with the weather the rest of the way, we would have a chance to still finish in time. After riding just short of a century, we made it to the base of Mount McLaughlin, jumping in Lake of the Woods as our first shower of the trip.
see them from over there? Is this a safe spot for these guys?
I mean, I think they're pretty good from here. You're not gonna see it from the highway.
All right.
Maybe an errant car coming down.
A couple sticks on top.
Yeah, I like your
Yeah, I really did the trick,
Camera.
didn't it? You can't see a thing over there.
Camouflage Wyatt. Can't really think of something better to do at 5:30 in the morning than bike up a dirt hill with a ski pack on.
Because you're an idiot.
Roger. Oh.
Good enough?
What are we gonna do?
The white definitely popped.
This was the first time we had rode without the trailers and just had backpacks. For the moment, it was pretty freeing. We had the ability to pedal easier and accelerate faster, but after a handful of miles, our backs were killing us. That's lesson number 4. Don't improvise unless you have to. McLaughlin is a pretty straightforward climb, up a long ridge and then skiing a bowl on the north side of the peak. From the top, we got a great view of the route ahead. Crater Lake had been closed since COVID hit, but rumors were flying it would open any day.
Come on, Wyatt. Alright, bikes.
We rode for a few hours looking for a campsite with water. Then we got the news. Crater Lake was opening. Perfect timing.
That guy's gonna nab it. He got all his things in his battery case. Yeah.
Woke up in the middle of the night, thought it was just another mosquito bite, went to get some more bug spray, and then found a pretty small, innocuously looking spider. Nothing that either of us recognized as far as, you know, black widow or brown lacrosse or hobo spider or anything like that. So we woke up this morning and it's, you know, it's not any worse. So hopefully it's going to just be swollen for, you know, a couple hours, maybe a day or two, and take its course, and we can just make fat upper lip jokes for a while and move on with our lives. Go climb some more mountains.
Climb, boys. Start to climb. Crater Lake National Park.
Well, faster than our predictions. Oh, hell yeah.
Look at
With
Thielsen.
Thielsen right in the back. That looks awesome. I'm glad we made this.
That's open.
Though it wasn't the nicest weather, riding around the deepest lake in the nation was incredible, even if it added a few thousand feet of climbing. We finished the day on a long downhill with views of our next peak, the lightning rod of the Cascades, Mount Thielsen. From the bikes, the coverage wasn't looking great on Thielsen, but that was a problem we'd deal with tomorrow. We found a nice campsite near Diamond Lake and hopped in, trying to wash the stink from the last few days, which leads to lesson 5. You never regret a swim. After a quick meal, we hopped in the tent, spotting another storm on the horizon. Our hopes of getting to bed early were thwarted by loud splashes in the lake that turned into heavy thumps on the ground all around us. This was the biggest hail I'd seen in my life. The climb up Thielsen went quickly, with a lot of dry trail to hike. The snow coverage didn't extend up the entire summit pillar, but we all wanted to summit, so we ditched our skis and scurried up.
Haven't even skied yet.
We can ski off this.
Back on the snow, we skied the first accessible line for maybe 1,000 feet. This was some of the best corn we'd had all trip, which suckered us into a second lap, hiking back up a larger face on the north side of the peak. Returning to the trailhead, yet another large storm rolled in, this time with heavy rain. As we packed up our trailers, we had to make a call. Either we could head north and try to make it over Windigo Pass, a long dirt road with possible snow at the top, or we could add serious miles on busy highways and loop around. All three of us opted for rolling the dice on Windigo, and we pedaled 20 miles that afternoon to a remote campsite at the headwaters of the North Umpqua River near the bottom of the pass. After a wet few days in a row, everything, and I mean everything, was wet.
It's like 8.5 miles up Windigo from here.
Heating my hands on my nutsack.
That's good.
Feeling pretty
I hope
good
that's
about
on
it.
film.
I'm ready. Fucking ready for the hills, boys.
With soaked clothes, the next morning we began the long grind up the pass.
70 in the rain.
The rain soon turned to snow, forcing us to dig in.
Rule number 1, boys. Hands and toes warm. Rule number 2,
Broken.
keep your spare clothes dry. Rule
Roger.
number 3, good attitude.
Check. 2 for 3 ain't bad. That's a C.
Hey!
That's a C.
Hey! Ah!
Woo! This was a peanut butter breakfast.
Oh, peanut butter toast.
Oh, that's what I'm talking
That's
about.
a new wine nickname right there. Here you go, boy. Hey. Gotta get some cow turns in. You wanna go on a June bike trip?
Yeah, January, buddy. Hey!
Somehow, none of us crashed on the muddy descent, and we found our way back to pavement, heading north toward South Sister. Again arriving near dark, I bonked really hard. Charlie and Wyatt carried me through, helping pull the last 20 miles of the ride, which leads me to lesson 6. There's no such thing as too many calories.
I was feeling really strong in the morning, and I think I just need some food.
Yeah.
I'm starting to.
Oh, big day
Taper.
on the bike, 62 miles in.
Yeah.
Had that snowstorm.
I think you
First
burn,
hour?
you burn a lot of energy when it's cold like that.
Absolutely do.
So there's storms coming in tonight, or
Yeah.
staying in.
But for tomorrow, I think it makes sense to start a little later if we're optimizing for skiing. Hiking at 6.
On top
Yeah.
by 11 or noon, down by 2 or 3.
And pedaling by 4, and then we've got almost 30 miles getting to camp by 7.
We had a couple friends from Bend who joined us on the peak, offering encouragement and companionship, but respectfully understanding we didn't want any food or beer from them, despite it being really hard to turn down. We wanted to keep our goal of a fully self-supported trip with no cheating. Starting yet another day in a light drizzle, we climbed into the heart of the storm. 1,000 feet from the summit became a full whiteout, forcing us to stop. After waiting for 45 minutes, with dwindling patience and cold bodies, we decided to turn around and make some miles on the bikes. The decision wasn't unanimous and was the only summit we wouldn't make on the trip. That's lesson number 7. Sometimes you get it wrong. This was the first crack we had between the three of us, and at the time it was hard to understand what that meant. In retrospect, I was probably wrong and should have listened more, but of course that's easy for me to say now. We go into mountains to learn things about ourselves by pushing limits. Suffice to say, I'm grateful the two of them had the patience to let me figure this all out on my own time. The conditions didn't make for the best ski out, and after getting turned around a few times, we eventually found our way. By the time we were back on the bikes and pedaling east towards Bend, the storm started to pass. At least it gave us incredible views on the way out and a hunger to return someday. In the moment, though, there wasn't much energy for reflection. We had 120 miles to ride, with over 9,000 feet of gain, just to get to the trailhead of Mount Jefferson. We knew this would be the crux of the trip, even in good weather. The forecast called for 2 days of heavy rain, with temps hovering in the mid to low 40s. Feeling like we couldn't catch a break, we decided to ride solo for the first time on the trip, letting tensions fade while going at our own pace. Looking back, this was an obvious sign of the stress between us, but I didn't see it as clearly then. The grind was all-consuming, and most of my bandwidth was focused on remembering to just eat snacks and keep us en route. After a 2-day slog, we arrived at Jefferson, rumored to be the toughest peak on our trip. As we rolled into the parking lot, I remember Wyatt asking me, "What the hell happened to summer?" Our morale was at an all-time low, with frozen toes, soaked layers, and weak bodies. And that's lesson number 8. Sometimes there isn't a shortcut to happiness. The next morning we set out in the dark with limited beta on the route. There was no established path, just the line we'd drawn on topo maps following the ridge up to Snowline. As dawn broke, we were greeted with steep bushwhacking through a wet understory and rain. Slowly the rain turned to ice as we climbed into increasing wind and fog. This was just about as miserable as it sounds. After having barely seen the sun for a week, none of us were in a great place. I had puddles in my boots and shooting pain in my toes. We didn't do much talking, let alone cheering each other on. We were all just trying to hold on. And then our fortunes flipped. The clouds broke and the sun poked through. In the next couple minutes, we climbed into pure mountain bliss. Spotting glimpses of the summit above us, we moved steadily up the next 3,000 feet with renewed energy. Then lesson 9 hit me. The lower the low, the higher the high. At this point, we were fully immersed in the trip, fighting for every step forward. Hours would sometimes go by in silence, all of us focused on just not stopping. But those moments help contextualize the good too. After days of suffering, those turns weren't just great, they were some of the best of my life. We milked every vertical inch before transitioning back to hiking shoes and descending through the forest to our bikes. Jefferson had lived up to its lore, a brutal yet beautiful mountain that only gives access to the hardy few. We all agreed that despite not being the tallest, it was by far the hardest climb of the trip. Then lesson 9 hit me. The trip was a microcosm of the world at large. Resiliency was at a premium. We weren't in control at all, and all we could do was keep moving forward, so that's what we would do. Smooth and narrow roads through iconic Oregon forest helped distract us as we methodically made our way north to the last peak, Mount Hood. We managed over 9,000 feet of climbing that day, jamming out to old hip-hop songs and riding the high of Jefferson. Putting on skins from the pavement was a luxury compared to the rest of the trip. But it was a bit weird to be heading up a peak amongst many strangers and on groomers. Conditions were ideal. We made great time. Getting to the top so early, we had to wait for the snow to flip to corn. After a half hour of waiting, we dropped into nearly perfect snow. skiing big GS turns back to the bikes. Completing our last week in Oregon, we packed up slowly and discussed continuing on to Mount Adams. The three of us didn't agree on exactly what to do, but we did agree the group was more important than any single person in it. Ultimately, we rode the rest of Oregon and jumped in the Columbia River on the border of Washington. Despite nearly 3 non-stop weeks together, this was the first moment we all relaxed. The trip was bell to bell every single day, and we were finally appreciating what we had just accomplished. That's my final lesson. Take time to soak it all in. Trips come and go, but the friendships last forever.